Let's go over the diagnostics by which you can recognize the tense forms of the verbs. So the first question is, what is the anatomy of a verb? What is a verb's morphology? Its form. Well, when you have a verb, you have a stem. So let's go with the lu stem. The semantics of the lu stem has to do with undoing something. You have a stem, and then you have prefixes. You have things that go in front of it. So you might have an augment, and you might have reduplication. So there's two different prefixes. Then you will sometimes have a suffix. So here's a suffix, kappa. And then you will have the ending will be made up of sometimes a connecting vowel and then the ending itself. In this paradigm, I've included the connecting vowels, so it's easier to remember and recognize. So how does this help us determine which tense form we're looking at? Well, 3 forms have an augment: aorist, imperfect, and pluperfect. The augment only shows up in the indicative mood. If it's imperative or subjunctive or optative, you won't see an augment, but it's there in the indicative, which is the most frequent. 2 forms have reduplication: the perfect. Whoops, that should be an epsilon up there. Reduplication is where the first letter of the stem is duplicated, and then there's the shortest vowel, an epsilon, put in the middle. Some forms of the present will have reduplication, like the verb didomi, which means I give. These are called me verbs, and they're essentially from a stage in the development of Greek as it emerged from several different dialects. But we're not going to focus on them because for the number of times that you run into them, it's not worth memorizing when you're just getting started. Now, every form will have the stem, and as I mentioned, for most words, the stem will change slightly. There will likely be a different aorist stem. There will likely be a different present or imperfect stem. It's because it's the imperfective stem. And the perfect and pluperfect will likely have their own stem as well. Sometimes stem change can be totally radical, so it's a completely different word. In English, we have go, and the past tense of go is not goed or something, it's went. Totally different verb. That happens for a number of verbs in Greek as well. The aorist will have a suffix that is sigma alpha. Present has no suffix. Imperfect has no suffix. The perfect has a suffix. The perfect has a kappa suffix and the pluperfect as well. And these suffixes will change with the voice of the verb. These are the active suffixes. Aorist has a theta, eta suffix. Perfect and pluperfect will just drop the suffix. And then every finite verb will have a personal ending. The connecting vowels will vary slightly. So the sigma alpha ending on the aorist will mean that the alpha will contract with whatever the ending might be. And there's a number of vowel contraction rules that will be triggered given certain endings. So let's look at which personal endings go on these tense forms. We're going to use the second person singular endings to demonstrate this. So the present ending would be lues. You loose, you untie, you destroy. The imperfect ending would be lues. The aorist ending will just be the sigma. Coming from the secondary ending here, because of vowel combinations, all you'll see is the alpha. The perfect will have alpha sigma, again because of the connecting vowel. Remember I mentioned that the connecting vowel is slightly different from the ending, so I've included the most common connecting vowels in the personal endings here, but it could be an alpha, an epsilon, or an omicron. In this case, it's an alpha. The pluperfect, you really don't have to worry about because it's so rare, but it just so happens that it has this epsilon, iota, sigma ending, just like the primary endings right here. But again, don't memorize the pluperfect. Don't worry about it. If you see reduplication and an augment together, then you know you have a pluperfect. And they're extremely rare relative to these other forms.